And we're live, streaming from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Thank you for joining us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for being here today. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. And speaking about subscribing, we would like to thank our audience, and both new and those who are joining us for the first time, and our returning members. We reached 1,000 subscribers on Saturday night, very late, and in the last 2 days we've had 80 subscribers. So thank you so much for joining us and for helping us grow our community of both professional artists and people who love that art. So we are a community and we're together. Please feel free to chat questions during the broadcast that we can ask our guests and myself. And we love that the more that join the conversation, the richer the conversation becomes. You can see our past 110 episodes on our website at www.jasontramm.net, and also our upcoming guests. We have a really exciting slate of guests for the next couple months, so check us out there. Today we have a wonderful show. We have Miss Indira Mahajan, who is a dynamic soprano who has performed in opera houses all over the world, both concert, opera, and we're delighted she's here. Welcome, Indira.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's so good to see you.
You're one of the people I haven't seen in a while, so it's great to catch up with friends. And how are things in New York these days?
Well, things in New York are actually they're busy. Slowly people are coming out, getting around, still being careful, still being careful. But there's a sense that things are changing for the better. As I was telling you, New York City was ground zero about a year
Absolutely.
ago. So it was heartbreaking to hear the ambulance, the sirens, like all hours of the night. It seemed like 24 hours. It was just it's very stressful, very trying, and very, very sad. Very, very sad.
We certainly lost a lot of people, and New York was the center of it all for a while there. Have things are starting to seem like they're starting to open up again, and I'm seeing the page start to be turned.
Yeah.
We all have to be careful, certainly, but as those vaccines roll out, I think we're
hmm
all getting hope.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
So why don't we go back to the beginning of your career? Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
I always wanted to be, I think, in the theater. I started out playing the violin, um, and I played for about 10 years. I was pretty bad, but I kept doing it. I wanted to be on Broadway, actually. I really enjoyed sort of the variety shows when I was young, coming up and watching the singers and the dancing, and I was so enthralled. It was really exciting, and I came from a musical family. My mother um, is an opera singer, and I grew up around music my whole life, different kinds of music. I was very fortunate to be surrounded by amazing musicians. Um, for me, this journey, on one hand, you'd think that it was something that I always wanted to do, but at a certain point, I also wasn't sure if I wanted to do it anymore. I mean, of course, I went to music camp, and growing up in the city, I went to lessons in Bloomingdale School of Music. I went to the High School of Music and Art after seeing Fame, which was great. And then I went to Oberlin Conservatory and continued to study. But then I wasn't sure that I really wanted to pursue this anymore. Like a lot of people, you question, you're learning about other things. I was studying other things at school. I was studying women's studies, African American studies, government. And so I then was accepted to a PhD program in New York for political science. So I thought that I would be going into public policy.
I had no idea that you worked on your PhD. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I didn't go, and it's so crazy because I think that when you really have music in your blood, or you feel like you are really called to do it, even if you are sort of discouraged or you're not sure, there's always this pull. So I met a teacher at Manus. His name was Tom Coltice, and my mom. First of all, let me just backtrack for a second. My mom was so brokenhearted that I might not be a musician. And she was like, just for the summer, before you go into this program, this PhD program in political science, have a couple of lessons, um, just one last time. So that's really what I did, and he was amazing. And he said, if you really want to do this, I think you can. Why don't you give me a year? Let me work with you, get your confidence back up, get you back in the saddle, so to speak, and join my summer program. And so I I did, and the first opera that I did with him was The Telephone, um,
Carlo
for the summer.
Bonotti, Giancarlo Bonotti, sure.
Yes, yes. And so that was sort of the beginning of the next chapter of my life, was how I would sort of get reintroduced to music. And I think that working, and so through my studies with him, I entered Manus, worked on my master's, and I think it was an amazing experience to go to school to the conservatory in New York City.
I was just going to ask, how did that experience change for you when you started up in New York, your hometown, and
Hmm.
one of the richest cultural capitals in the world, certainly.
Yep, it was amazing because and it was great because as a poor student, you can't afford to go to the Met Symphony Orchestra, but a lot of people would call into the school, not being able to go to the opera, and they say, "I've got these tickets, I can't go. I'm going to drop them off by the school. Maybe there's a student that can attend." And so we oftentimes, when you're going to school in the city, you get tickets to go to the opera, and it was just the most inspiring um, experience because you could sort of be in class all day, leave the building, go to the Met, or go hear the Phil, go to Broadway. And then I started working with a teacher who was singing at the Met. So with Ruth Falcon, it was wonderful to be able to hear your teacher singing. Um, and so that was, it was really amazing. It was a great experience to go to school in the city. And that was also a great way to get signed with management, because there are a lot of managements, a lot of agents in New York City, and they would come to our productions.
Of course, they
Um,
would.
yeah, so
Yeah,
that's how I
it's
got signed, which was great. And then also being singing in the city, studying in the city, you have this chance to work with the most amazing people in the business while you're here. And it was life changing. It was life changing to have these experiences, to work with the best of the best, and to be singing with amazing talent.
so you've re-engaged, you're re-energized. What was your first professional role after all that renewed and rejuvenation?
So my first, it was so great. I was singing at New York City Opera. That was my first job out of
Wow.
school. And I was just so great. I was the lady in waiting to Lady Macbeth. So Verdi was really the first opera that I did professionally, well, at the big house. Um, and it was a beautiful cast. Lauren Flanagan, Mark Delavan. I mean, we had a tremendous cast. Um, so that was fantastic. That was fantastic. And so I did several productions there. Um, La Boheme, I did Musetta there, and that was sort of like the beginning for me. I knew that this is what I really wanted to do.
Describe your how did it feel to be on the stage for the first time on your debut, your first performance at the City Opera?
I was a nervous wreck. I was so nervous. Um, and there's something, I mean, it's wonderful to be working in your hometown, but it's also nerve-wracking because your childhood friends are here, and you want to do so well. But because I was debuting at City Opera, my hometown, like just right down the street from my house, I had an opportunity to sort of re-engage, like with my high school teachers, who all came out, were so supportive, they were so proud. And I think that was sort of, I realized the part that made me feel the best was not just the performing, but being able to perform and knowing that there were students from my high school that were in the audience, and they were so excited that there was a graduate who had sort of made it, and at this on the stage at City Opera. So that was really it was very heartwarming, and I felt that that was probably the most important aspect of my performing, was giving back to the students.
That's exciting, and
Hmm.
as a teacher myself and as a conductor, I just love when I get to engage with young people, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so exciting to pass on what you learn and to watch people get excited by it. It never ceases being amazing to me.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
So from those early experiences, what was the next chapter of your performing?
Then I started to, I did some young artist program. I did a glimmer class, which was great. Also meeting some wonderful, wonderful singers. Um, but I think what was really a turning point for me was when I first started to do Porgy and Bess. Um,
You certainly have become one of the most acclaimed Besses on the stage, and you've done that all over the world. How many performances of Porgy and Bess have you done?
I don't even
If you
remember.
had to guess.
I would say definitely over 200. I would say almost close to 300.
Almost an
Um,
entire year of Porgy and Bess performances.
yes. I mean,
Amazing.
I have done it a lot of times. And actually, that was really one of the first operas that I did because my mother did it.
Oh,
And
wow.
so when I was a student during the summer months when I was out of school, I got a chance to go on tour with her. And my first role in Porgy and Bess was Scipio, um, the orphan boy.
Sure.
I had these long braids and I put him in a hat, and so I did that during the summer, which was fantastic. And so I grew up hearing that music and hearing Gershwin. So American opera was really my introduction to opera. Um, and again, having worked with all these amazing singers that my mom um, was friends with, was so inspiring. Was really inspiring. But by the time I did Porgy, I had already done a lot of opera. I started out, I sort of jumped, I should sort of go back a little bit, but I started out with Verdi doing like Rigoletto and Lucia. Then I was doing Lucia, and and a lot of Mozart. So I had a chance to really do a lot of different composers. And I did out there for a while doing that. One of the highlights was just being able to work um, in Europe and all over the world singing before I started doing Porgy. And I felt like I was coming home. By the time I got a chance to do my first production of Bess, I felt like I was seasoned on stage, but I was also doing a new role. And that was sort of frustrating because there were so many amazing people that, sort of came before me. Those are big shoes to fill. I heard the most beautiful voices in the world singing Bess. So it was challenging. It was very challenging.
So, attempting that role for the first time, what are some of the challenges? I know I've conducted Porgy and Bess a bunch of times, and I just love that show. It's just such an,
Hmm.
and the role of Bess is so complicated. She's seductive, yet she's unsure. She's addicted. She's got, I
Yeah,
mean, she is trying to find redemption with her love for Porgy, and it's such a challenging character. And musically, it's really quite dramatic.
it is. It really is. I mean, and on some level, it's almost thankless because no one, unless you're doing the role, I don't think anybody realizes how physical it is. Aside from sort of the singing, which is challenging, but you're really all over the stage. And dramatically, you are, it's like Madame Butterfly. I mean, it just pulls at you. It pulls at you. And by the
I
end of the
call it
evening,
American Verismo.
yes, it really is. It really is. And the story, I mean, it's a beautiful story, but the role is really, really challenging. Um, so I think that probably the most complicated is just trying to find a balance between not going too far, like with Butterfly. You don't want to go too far dramatically, and then vocally you can't sustain it. So it's trying to find the balance. And I'm fortunate that I've done enough performances now where I've sort of found the balance. Um, and and that takes a while. that really does take a while, and experience, and that's where experience comes in. That's where just maturity comes in, because in the beginning, you're finding yourself.
What would your current self tell yourself that when you were about to start your first Bess? What would you tell yourself if you can go back in time?
To calm down, just calm down, take a deep breath, and to enjoy it more. I I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to because I was really nervous, and as much as I loved the piece, um, I think I I was quite nervous because I understood what it took, and how profound this piece is for American audiences. I mean, we love Gershwin. Um, so I would just say to relax and to enjoy it more, to have fun with it.
It's easy with perspective, but in the moment, we're all like, we have a deadline. We have to get on that stage and deliver
That's
that
right.
content, and it's so hard in the moment.
That's right. That's right. And and Francesca's production, that was the first, Francesca Simel's production was the first production of Best that I did at Washington National. And that was really different for me because I was used to seeing traditional productions of Porgy. So this was really different. It was I felt so much more vulnerable because you didn't have the sets that I was used to and the costumes that I was used to, and you're just really naked on the stage. Um, so that was challenging. That was really, really challenging, and having to create this character without the props, without the pomp and circumstance. And I appreciated that that was the first production of Best that I did, because I really had to sort of dig deep and do the work, and again, I took some time, and it's evolved. And I think it's so amazing, regardless of what the role is. If a singer has the chance to do a role several times, and it's a blessing, and it doesn't happen very often, to get the chance to do role so many times, where you actually can mature and find yourself and play with things in a way that you can't if you've only done a role once or twice. You always wish that you could go back and get a chance to do something again.
That's very profound, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's that particular role is it's such a signature for you. Where are
Hmm.
some of your favorite places that you've sung that? Where are some of the most interesting places you've sung Bess?
Oh gosh, hands down, one of the most interesting places was in Paris at Opera Comique. We had such a great cast. I just loved everybody in the production. And then to be in Paris in the spring, are you kidding me? Um, it was amazing. And we did oh God, I don't even remember how many performances we did. But we were there for about 2 months. And these are also singers that you've worked with, Kevin Shore, Laquita Mitchell. I mean, I know that you've conducted them as
Such
well.
wonderful artists.
Oh my gosh. But we had this, it was a beautiful camaraderie. It really was. And again, it was like another production, sort of very European. There was nothing but like a table. We had nothing. And, but it was the first time that I was in a production where there was projections and video screens. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? But we made it work, because in the end, I think that the music always speaks for itself. The singers just brought it to life. I mean, and I think you've also worked with Jermaine, and just we had such a wonderful cast. Angela Simpson. I mean, just these voices were fantastic. Eric Green. So these were singers that I would then become friends with. Would
I
Yeah.
just saw Eric Green just did his first Porgy, if I believe. Am I
Mhm.
correct on that? Yeah, he did Jake for me when we did it in Newark. I'm like,
See,
wow, good for him.
see.
Awesome.
Yep, yep, yep. And there's always that sense of evolving. Like you start off with one role, and then I started off doing a Clara,
Yep.
covering Clara, then singing Clara, then and so we all have, most of us who've done the principal roles started out doing the smaller roles. So and you work your way sort of up the ranks, so to speak.
Especially if you're a baritone.
Indeed,
A lot
indeed.
of roles for baritones.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
So some of the European productions must have been really interesting. Have you any specific stagings that stick in your mind as being, well, that's interesting? Okay.
Yeah, Paris was interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it's also very interesting to work with non-Americans who are directing it, um, and who may not be sort of familiar with all of the idiom, um,
Interesting.
the yeah, the American idiom, the Southern idiom, the African American idiom. I mean, these are all very,
The racial
they're very,
overtones, obviously, that's so
yeah,
important.
and it's unique, and it's, and so that's why it was very helpful while we were doing it in Europe. It was great to have like American singers, um, who could bring that idiom to the stage.
Before I conducted it in my production in Newark, New Jersey, with New Jersey State Opera, I did it in Albania with the National Opera Theater of Albania, and that was a wild experience for me because we used the Albanian chorus,
Hmm.
we used the Albanian orchestra, of course,
Wow,
and
wow.
we had to bring three of the American singers with us. And they were wonderful singers, and the rest of the roles were all Albanians.
See, now how did that work out for you?
That was fascinating, and there was like every day it was like a sociology lesson for me.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was like, we had to explain what American racism is because they really like, why are people treating them like that? It was like
right.
we had to explain it, and the translators were always. It was like, does he really understand what I'm saying? It was always kind of interesting,
Yeah,
but as
yeah,
you said, the music speaks for itself, and everyone loves everyone knows Summertime. Everyone knows the music. It's so ubiquitous and
yeah.
so important, and by the end, it was enormously successful.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's always going to be successful. That's the thing about Porgy. I mean, it's always going to be a success. It will always do very well. There will always be people going to see it. It will always make a lot of money for a company. And it's beloved. It's just one of the greatest American opera I think that's ever written. And I couldn't wait to be in this production. I mean, I was so excited. I could not wait to put on that red dress. And I loved the role. I thought it was one of the most exciting roles in the soprano repertoire. I really did.
Now, as many of the artists I've worked with who do Porgy and Bess, you're just as comfortable singing in the Italian repertoire, the dramatic, Butterfly, and other things. What's it like going back and forth between Porgy and Bess and other very repertory famous operas?
I think that, Porgy and Bess helped me to feel even more comfortable on the stage and more engaged, not just with my body, but with the story. Um, and maybe because it's in English, maybe because I grew up with it and I just knew it so well, but it helped me. It was like a guidepost to how to bring a role to life. Even though I had done a lot of roles prior to that, going back to operas after doing a lot of Porgy and Bess productions, I think s- strengthened my ability to tell a story. Um, I think that that's where I feel like I learned how to tell a story is with American opera with Porgy and Bess. Because also I have such a unique relationship with the production. I knew every part. As a kid, I was in the wings. I was like a theater kid, and I would sit in the wings and learn everybody else's role. So I also then understood the importance after doing this of learning other people's roles, not just my own, and sort of again being able to communicate first and foremost a story, and dealing with the vocalisms, which is important, but it's also really important to be able to be interesting. And one of my teachers, the late Paul Eccles at Mannes College, because I also did a lot of early music, said to me, whatever you do, never be boring. Just be interesting. Don't be boring. And it stayed with me. It stayed with me because he said, this is why people don't want to go to the opera. This is why people don't want to go to the theater. They want to see a live performance. And I think that the artists that speak to us the most are the singing actors. So that's what I learned from Porgy.
Thank you
one
for
of them.
sharing that. It's such a journey that you've been on, and you've taken that, and so many wonderful artists come in and out of this repertoire, and I think
Hmm.
it's like you were talking Kevin Short, for example, and shout out to Kevin for being named to the vocal faculty at the Juilliard School. That's
Yes, shout out.
wonderful news,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
Kevin's been on the show, and he's a friend, and we wish him nothing but great success.
Nothing but, nothing but.
So what do you say to the people of the some of the challenges of the material of Porgy and Bess?
I would say first of all, I know that it's a very sort of it's controversial for many artists whether to even do it, when to do it in their career. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because you don't want to get pigeonholed. You want the opportunity to do other roles with these companies that would hire you, and not just Porgy and Bess. So it's very, very challenging. But I would say to a young artist, if they said, should I do this? I got an opportunity to do it. I would say absolutely, because you will build relationships. It's so important and so vital to have this community of singers, um, in your life. You will need that. You will need these friendships that you will have forever. And you need to be with people that are on similar journeys, that understand the challenges, that are of like experience as well. I mean, of course, um, to have the opportunity to sing, and to earn money doing your craft is what we want to do. But for this particular um, opera, there's just so much more involved. It's a family, and you want to be a part of that family. I mean, Jason, because you then become a part of that family. You know.
I've always been amazed at the artists I've worked with on Porgy. I've worked with them in a lot of other places since, and yeah,
Hmm.
it really is a family. Everyone knows each other.
Hmm.
Everybody knows who sings those roles, and
Yeah,
who
yeah,
just did it in Paris, and who just did it at the Scala, who did it at the first Met or the second Met
that's
production.
right.
It's
That's
incredible.
right. It is, and there's a real, I feel, and this has been my experience, a real love, um, within the community of singers with Porgy. I mean, we love each other, we support each other, we will come out for each other, we will root for each other. It is like a family unlike any other. And especially in this business, in this career, where it can be very thankless and very lonely, um, and challenging. You want to have people that have been there, who can mentor you. That is so important, to be able to work for young singers, to work with for the more seasoned singers, and get some feedback, get some advice, lessons sometimes, while you're on the road. So I think that that is probably one of the most challenging aspects of this opera, is whether or not you do it, and when to.
Excellent. What do you think about the relevance of the story or the plot of Porgy and Bess to today's culture, and how do you see that fitting in?
Yeah, I think that there are certain themes that just sort of transcend time. Um, Love, addiction, betrayal. Um, these are the things that just any good story, any good opera is made of. But this is life. I mean, dealing with issues of racism, dealing with classism, dealing with sexism. I mean, it's all there. All of these amazing elements that make a story. I mean, that's also sort of part of our socio-political makeup, in our country now. I mean, it's no different, when it was done, 20 years ago versus when it's done now. I think that the singers change, and maybe it's set in different, the settings will change, but I think the themes uh, are the same.
Yeah, there's so
Uh,
many great themes to revel in there, and the use of jazz and the use of like jazz harmony. And Gershwin was so well versed in it, living where he did near Harlem, and
mhm.
loving the jazz musicians and loving what he was absorbing, and mixing that with the operatic tradition. A lot of people don't know that he owned his own opera company. He
Yeah,
loved opera, and this
that's
was his
right.
grand opera.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think today it's also, it's very relevant today, as we are talking about issues like equality and diversity, and we're really sort of right now we're thinking about it. We're thinking a lot more about it now and dealing with it than ever before. And so this production um, is part of our history. It's part of the good, bad, and the ugly. It is who we are. It is part of our it's part of our history. It's part of our history. And I think that we have to, we have to tell that story. We have to tell that story.
I know I learned so much by being around colleagues who were different than me and who were such amazing colleagues, and just hearing them talk at lunch about their experience with the show and how they've grown into it and how they bring themselves into it. It taught me so much.
Yeah, it does. And I think that, and again, it's unique. A unique story to the Black community in this country. And so while other people have performed it, and other races and other places outside of America have performed it, it's a story that is very uniquely American. And it's very unique to the Black community. Which I do not think, I mean, I know it's been oftentimes very controversial, and it will continue to be controversial, and we'll still talk about the stereotypes, and is this something that we still want to do today? I mean, it'll always be an issue, but at the end of the day, we still perform it because I think the music is so beautiful. Um, and I think the artists that tell the story are amazing, are just amazing.
I always say it's very difficult to put today's morality on yesterday's art because it was a different society that created it. That art is like an amber that collects everything that's going on in society at that time, solidifies it in that amber, and then like when you look at Beethoven, you've got to look at the rise, the revolutionary side of Beethoven. You have to look at the French Revolution. You've got to know what he was surrounded by. It's similar with Porgy and Bess, and it could be an incredible teaching moment.
It is. I think it should be a teaching moment. And I think that we shouldn't really back away from it. I think that we really should talk about it. And I think that it sometimes is an uncomfortable conversation, but we are getting very used to having these uncomfortable conversations. And we need to, in order to understand this particular piece, because, most of these operas are coming, are written at a time when there was a lot of political and social upheaval. In Europe and in this country. So I think that art often is reflecting what's happening in our society, in the country. And it's always going to be controversial, and it's always going to be political.
And art is always a mirror of its society that created it. So I think it's important to know what that mirror was reflecting at the time.
Yes, definitely. And so I think that Porgy is just, I don't think, I'm hoping that it will not be the only avenue for African American singers. I mean, I'm hoping, and this is one of the things that I'm sort of really enjoying about, I mean, if you can say you're enjoying anything during this sort of pandemic, I mean, I almost don't want to say it because of the loss that we've experienced, but one of the silver linings in art is watching creatives create. No matter where they are, they're going to create. In a pandemic, on lockdown, they're going to create. And I have enjoyed hearing voices from from singers and artists in theater that we have not heard from. And I'm loving that the voices that we're now hearing are so diverse. We're really beginning to see a lot more people of color in the forefront, being now in positions of where they can make decisions now. And I think that's really changing the landscape. And I think, again, it's creating a conversation that has been a long time coming.
It's very healthy and very necessary.
I think so.
Those diverse viewpoints and points of view and way of looking at issues, I think opera needs to change. Society is changing. Opera needs to change with it.
Yeah, And I think that opera is reflecting that. I think what we're seeing now is sort of a reflection of sort of the change that we're seeing. And again, that's really important. And I have loved the aspect of watching creatives create new avenues of opportunity to have conversation, to talk about the things that we don't get a chance to talk about because we are generally, when we're on the road or we're performing, we're dealing with our craft. We're only dealing with our voices or the music. But now the music has sort of been sidelined. And now we're actually having these intimate moments with each other that I don't think we've had before, not to this degree. And
I started this podcast just because instead of guest conducting and traveling and running from rehearsals and giving budgets, I was sitting at home thinking, now what? So I
yeah,
said, I miss
yeah,
my colleagues. I miss talking, and I've gotten great. I've learned so much. This is our 112th episode. I've learned so much from the past guests and from yourself about why we do what we do. We've had to
yeah,
become so philosophical these
yeah.
days.
No, absolutely. And what was so interesting, and I was talking to my agent, Peter Ransman, as you all know, and Andrea Del Giudice. We were one that I studied with who's amazing, and having these
No,
lessons.
no,
And
no stranger. Both of them are no strangers to this show.
no, right, right, and having lessons, Zoom, and I was just talking to Peter, actually just a few days ago. He's talking me off the ledge about something, and but connecting, still connecting with the people that we're working with, but in such an it's so much more intimate now. I find relationships with the people that we've been working with are so much more rich and profound now than prior to the pandemic.
I think we've all been put in the same place. We're all kind of searching and we're all finding ways to how can we still be creatives even when our primary form of creation is kind of silent. So
Yeah,
it's looking for the ways to do that. And it's been a lot of interesting, everyone has found ways to innovate or to rethink themselves or kind of,
yeah,
or be introspective and try something new or pivot in some way.
yeah,
What are some of
pivot.
the things that you've been doing during this period?
So it's so interesting because I kind of leaned into lockdown. I didn't find it. I leaned into it, and it became an opportunity for solitude. And I think as an artist, we we need that. We need time uh, for quiet to think about things. At least I did. I know that my life prior to this, and I'm sure yours too, is very busy. And there's this feeling that there's never enough time in the day, and you're running and you're ripping and you're doing all these things. And I felt like while this was a very sort of tragic time, it was also a time for tremendous reflection, and as I said, solitude, and thinking about why we do what we do, thinking if we want to continue to do what we do, and what that, for me, what does that look like? What are the next steps? What does that look like moving forward? What does that look like for all of us moving forward? And again, this is part of the conversation that a lot of artists are having now. Like, you can create these opportunities, and then there's some people that I think have opted just not to do it anymore. I mean, it's been really hard. It's been um, the loss of income, the loss of opportunity. Um, just it's not the same. And moving forward, we don't really know what it's going to look like and how long that's going to take. We don't know.
One thing there's definitely going to be, even when we start to open up again, it's going to be a slow rollout, I believe,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's going to be, budgets are going to be affected for a long time. It's going to take
yeah.
time to get us back to what quote unquote was normal. I think we were already on a downturn before COVID
Mm-hmm.
hit, so
Mm-hmm.
now it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see a lot of different types of productions. We've
Yeah.
seen a lot of video, interesting videos being made. People
Yes.
experimenting with cameras and angles and
Yes.
opera on cinema. It's going to be interesting to see how those experiments translate into the next chapter as well.
I think so. I think so. I mean, and also, like, one of the things that was so interesting for me was creating art um, with my colleagues, collaborating on Zoom, using Zoom as a platform. I thought this is so strange and so weird and so uncomfortable. Um, but it was an opportunity to engage again and to find, and again, creators are going to find ways to create. But one of the really sort of interesting things for me was during the pandemic, I mean, recently, was the first time that I collaborated during this time with another artist, with Don Friedman, who's a beautiful pianist. And we decided that we wanted um, to collaborate, to do some explore work by women composers, women of color, coming sort of off the heels of Black History Month, moving into Women's History Month, and sort of combining this sort of genre aspect
What a great
of
project.
music making. Yeah,
Who
it
are
was
the
a great project.
composers?
So we did music by Margaret Bonds. And I have to say that it was very nerve-wracking um, to sort of work during this pandemic, because I had to take my mask off. It was very scary. We were all tested twice before, making sure that we were very safe. And that was sort of hard. So it was beautiful to make music again, and I really missed the collaboration. But there was also this sort of element of stress um, while we were creating that. So anyway,
Were these new
that
pieces that you learned for this particular
yeah,
collaboration?
these were new pieces, new composers, and I think that there's also Korean American composers that Donna was exploring, and just really, I think as women, we wanted to explore music by women, and again, telling the story. So it's been very interesting making music during this time. Um, and I'm very, very thankful to still be able to work with other musicians. I'm thankful that we still have the ability to do it. And
Did you release that concert? How can people see that concert?
well, we are. I think one of the videos is actually on my Facebook page. And so during Women's History Month, just stay tuned. We'll just
Oh,
be
okay.
yeah, stay tuned. We will post them, and don't want to
Make
give it all
sure
away.
you put the link to that concert, however you're going to do it. Make sure you put
Hmm.
it on the Music Matters page so we can share it with
Okay,
our audiences.
we will. We will. Love to do that. Love to do that.
So you're out there. You're just about to start making art again. What was it like when you hit that first note and you're doing what you were born to do after such a long time off? What did it feel like to you?
I was so nervous, and I felt I was nervous. Um, I I welcomed the opportunity to do it again, but it felt very strange for me. You're trying to get your legs back. Um, so I felt scared. I felt nervous, but I was also really excited to be singing again, because that's what we do. And so sort of something comes alive in you, and then I'm just like, okay, what other opportunity? What's the next opportunity? And then we are being invited to do these podcasts and other podcasts, and just get a chance to talk about art and other composers, and really shine a light on, as I said, a lot of women of color, and just promoting other other works and other composers, and meeting new and working with new musicians, new artists. It's my first time really connecting with Donna and seeing her in person. It was the first time I actually saw her in person. The first time I met her was Zoom. We made music on Zoom. So when we released, this was the first time we saw each other, and we also didn't have a chance really to rehearse. Not very much. I mean, no one wanted to do that. No one wanted to come out of their house. So we just went in and we sang through it a bit, and then we just recorded and went.
That's very brave. It's great to be doing that again and to making music, and I can't wait to hear that project. That'll be.
Mhm.
I always love exploring the works of new composers, and there's such great music to be explored there. So
Yeah.
congratulations on digging into that
Thank you.
repertoire.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And digging into new relationships.
We've had some great love in the chat feature. We've got comments like This woman personifies excellence. Indira is a great artist from Robert Sims. A shout out.
Oh, Robert.
So there's always some really lovely comments. Really, people really love your art, and you really are quite. And I agree with them because I've worked with you, and you really are such an exciting performer, such an honest performer. When you sing, you embody the character, and you just kind of bring a lot of yourself in there. It's so personal whenever you open your
Oh,
mouth.
thank you. And I'm so glad that a lot of my Oberlin family is tuning in, and so that's just great. That's just great.
So we have another first question from the audience.
Oh,
This
great.
is from Robert from Ohio. So maybe this is an Oberlin person right there.
Mm-hmm.
What is a role that you've never sung that you would love to sing someday?
Lady Macbeth.
Ooh, she is an angry one.
Yeah. Yep.
I love
Yep.
that role.
There's a lot of colors, a lot of colors. And again, my introduction to it was The Lady in Waiting. So I know the opera. It's beautiful, but again, these women that are sort of all over the place. These women that are, oh God, they're very complicated. I am just drawn to this music. I love the colors, um, the dramatic aspect of these characters. So yeah, that to answer your question, Lady Macbeth.
Those universal human themes and her to what
Yeah.
is she truly evil? How does she like her will bend and she become more evil? It's a pretty
Mm-hmm,
interesting plot for sure.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of tragic like Bess. There's a tragic element to these women.
The most heartbreaking part of Porgy and Bess is the is after he sings he Sport and Life sings and the baby and like he puts the drugs there and just watches her fall apart. It just breaks my heart
I
every time.
know, I
And then when
know.
there's a boat when the big shout out section dun, dun, I mean and Gershwin uses that like foxtrot so ironically.
Oh, I know.
And it's so vicious and so
It
mean.
is. It is vicious, and I think
Oh,
I loved Francesca's staging for that because when she sort of best puts the baby down and sort of chooses the drugs, but it's the way in which it's staged is so profound, and I think it's so um, mirrored the tragedy of addiction, and sort of this choosing the loss of your family, choosing this drug over your family. I mean, and it was just so beautifully portrayed. And when I saw it, recently at the Met, I was so glad to see it become part of that repertoire again.
it's been too
And
long.
yes, it's too long. And to see these amazing, beautiful singers have this wonderful opportunity, it was so great. So great.
One of our good friends, Everett McCorvey, was getting ready for a tour,
Yes.
and I went to see Everett. Everett's been on the show too; he's a friend, and
Mhm.
he was getting ready to do his tour, and at the same time, Porgy was going on at the Met, and he's like, I think half of the people he works with are in that production.
Mm.
I just thought
See,
it's amazing.
yep, 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 yep.
Wow, it was great to see so many friends I knew from a lot of different places making their debuts, and
Yes,
very exciting.
definitely. Yes, definitely. Oh, and you were asking me about the other composers. Florence Price was
Sure.
um another whose music is so profound, so beautiful. And it is really my hope that this music, that music by these composers, these African American women will become part of the standard repertoire. I want to see this music done not just for Black History Month or Women's History Month. I would love to see this as part of what we do, standard repertoire at the conservatory. And I think more so now than when I was a student. But I just want to, with many people, shed a light on this beautiful music and expose it to the world.
Well, with artists like yourself who bring such integrity to their work performing it, I think that's gonna people when people hear it again, like, oh, they'll hear it with new ears. And
Yeah,
there's such a focus on that of is bringing it to life with new ears and really listening to some of that great art. There's some wonderful voices.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm loving that. And again, because we are hearing more voices out there now, with these podcasts and with these shows that we've not heard before, and a perspective that we have not heard before. So we are being introduced to new new artists, new composers, new ways of looking at this art. So that's something I think that's been a silver lining in all of this.
Got another question from the audience. This is
Mhm.
from Dan from Denver, and he asks, "What are some of the most humorous moments when you've been on the stage? Maybe not humorous at the moment, I'm sure, but what are some things you look back on in your long career that you say, boy, that was really funny?"
So what was really funny, and it stands out because it was so funny that we couldn't sing anymore. This was the first act of Marriage of Figaro, and I was doing the role of Susanna, and the bed broke in the beginning while we're measuring, and for
Oh
some
no!
reason, it was one of those moments. Um, we just couldn't stop laughing. And literally then we laughed so hard that I didn't know where we were anymore in the music. Nobody sort of knew where they were. And it was just like, oh no. I mean, it was very funny, but it was also very scary. And I had another moment like that with Kevin Short in Paris. We were doing Porgy, something really funny happened, and I almost had to leave the stage. In fact, I went into the wings to compose myself and left him on the stage by himself because I couldn't. It was really one of the funniest moments that I've ever had on stage. So, yeah, these things happen. It's live theater. Anything can happen. That's the difference between like what we do on the theater live versus, a movie.
That's what makes it so exciting, though, is that these are actual people up there actually recreating the art. And if
Yep,
you want the same all the time, you just listen to the tape or watch a DVD.
that's
And
exactly right.
and there's nothing that can replace the excitement of that energy when it's done. And that's why we do it. That's why we
It's
go.
true. Yeah,
And that's why the art form will survive as we turn the page and open up the next chapter.
I agree. I mean, that's part of the sort of our tenacity and the human spirit. We just find new ways of doing what we do. Um, yeah,
We were a artists have to be a hardy bunch, and we have to be strong, and even in these challenging times, to keep on finding what we love and to tell our truth through our music.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Tell our truth through our music. And I think that now for many of us, there are new truths to explore, to discover, and to share.
That is the truth, and very powerful and very, very profound.
Indeed. Indeed.
How can people find out more about your work?
So my website, IndiraMahajan.com, Peter Ransman's website, Peter Ransman Artists. Um, Oftentimes Andrea will post things that her students are doing. So
Shout out to
out
Andrea Del
there,
Giudice, one of
yeah,
my dear friends,
shout
and
out.
Peter.
Yes, shout out to a great team. And God bless them because I tell you, it's these profound relationships when we are going through this kind of adversity. Um, I can't even tell you how I have leaned on them during this time, and just in life. And I think that's another thing that is a really important part of what we do is having a team of people around you, of people that love you and support you the way that they do, the way that they support their artists. Because it's a hard life. It is a hard life.
It's harder to the best of circumstances.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, my mother, shout out to my mom, because I mean, good grief. I mean, if I didn't have my mom, I don't even think I'd be singing, really. So,
My mom is listening to the podcast, and she'll give me notes at the end.
oh,
I'm a new podcast host. Well, getting in front of an orchestra is easy for me. The podcasting took some time to figure out.
I don't know how you do it. 'Cause I'm telling you, it's like a foreign language to me. It really is. I mean, this is more nerve-wracking than a live performance. I mean, I
You
still
are
have to
so
sing one of
eloquent. You are so eloquent,
Oh
and
gosh,
it's
thank
been
you.
such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And congratulations to you. Congratulations.
Well, we're going to continue to present wonderful guests like yourself and people that have so much to say, because it's the conversations that we miss the most, being with our colleagues and putting out the words and just being together. And at least we have the ability to connect in ways we never have before.
Yep. Amen. Amen to that.
Well, thank you so much, Indira. It's been a pleasure to have you on Music Matters, and I can't wait to make music with you again soon.
Yes, again soon. Thank you so much for having me. Good
Thank you
night.
for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Our next guest will be Kendra Erica, a pop and dance singer who's been on the Billboard charts for 3 of her songs and has an enormous following, and we're delighted that she's going to join us as we change genres from opera to pop music and dance music. And we're so excited. We love the conversation with different genres and artists to see how people are engaging and thriving and finding ways to cope with this COVID environment. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, keep music alive.
Et puis voici mon cœur qui ne bat que pour vous.